Um, Within our program, we want to really look at evaluation and testing to get the data that we need to be able to inform farmers and policymakers and others out there into how things are working on a farm. We use all sorts of different things in our planning. We look at late season cornstalk sampling, some crop scouting, in-field trials, soil quality testing, Russell 2, P-index, energy, and the list can go on and on. So we really do find a place where the farmer is comfortable, look at the resource concerns that he has, and we really tailor his plan and his actions, or our actions for him, to his needs. Now to kind of switch and lead into this end-of-season cornstalk sampling. When we're looking at planning, we really do want to know what the rotation looks like. If you live in a world of corn and you think corn is it, you can very easily get your head buried in the sand and not realize some of the other issues that are going on. Same thing with soybean. If we thought soybean was the end-all be-all and we wanted to plant continuous soybean forever and ever, we probably would see our yields over time decrease somewhat. But we want to be good stewards of the land, and our farmers want to be good stewards of the land. So we're going to look at their entire operation. In some cases, it's interesting to work across 6 states because here in Iowa, we're mostly corn and soybean rotation. Across the other states, we've got everything from tobacco to cotton, sunflowers, milo, alfalfa, other forage crops. There's a lot of different rotations. The possibilities are endless. And so really, me claiming to be an expert on all of those is not doable. So that's where my CCAs and TSPs come into play as well. So specifically on cornstalk sampling, it's collected after physiological maturity to assess the end status of the crop. So it is a post-mortem look at how your corn crop and your nitrogen that you applied worked together. So research has shown that as nitrogen is taken up, it first accumulates in the ear, and the plant's going to use all it can possibly do to get to the absolute maximum yield capacity of that plant. As long as there is nitrogen available and the plant is not at its yield potential and conditions are good, it's going to pull that nitrogen up until the point where it's reached its maximum yield potential. At that point, nitrogen starts accumulating in the lower portion of the stalk. This is research that's done many years ago by Dr. Blackmer and Dr. Mallarino here at Iowa State University, and it has been tweaked per state over time. It's proven to be a great methodology of testing to see what has happened at the end of a year. It determines excess in availability, and it does this even at levels where yield is not limited, and so that's really important. It's best used when we do this over years. It's not a one-stop shop. We had a year last year in Iowa in particular that was really, really wet. This year it was wet early and then it got really dry. Illinois, for example, this year was very dry. I know after a certain date there was almost no rain, and when I was out doing cornstalk sampling in Illinois, we saw cracks in the ground that would rival some of those in southern Oklahoma and Texas, 3 and 4 inches wide. Running through cornfields. We had corn that was cannibalizing itself, and so there was a lot of different things. Then up in northern Indiana and parts of Ohio, it was really wet, and they had trouble getting the crop in. It was a late crop. A lot of the nitrogen, some of the farmers thought had been washed away because of the amount of rain. They applied more, and so it really gives you an idea of how that season looked, but you have to be wise in using this data because you have to look at also what was going on environmentally. You need to know where your field stood before you planted, and need to realize that it's an ongoing process. It's a learning process to help you better assess how you manage that field. The way the sampling is done, we have 4 locations within a field. We take 10 stocks from a given location. So whoever is collecting the sample will use a GPS to walk to the selected point. Within that point, we'll take 10 stocks and put them in a bag. and aggregate them together. They'll be sent to the lab and all ground together. Locations are selected based on soil type and what's seen on the aerial image. Some of this work historically has been done by hand, me, and a GPS and a GIS software and some soil overlays, sitting in an office, hands picking points based on what I see on an image and what kind of things are going on in the soil. There has been an effort here recently by another group within our organization called the On-Farm Network to make some of this a little more automated. Look at some algorithms to look at greenness factor and some things that are going on across the field. And hopefully, while it won't remove the human aspect of it, it might help make the selection be a little more even across the entire process and take out a little bit of the human error that's associated with it. Collection protocol, we wait for the onset of black layer. At that point, we cut an 8-inch stock segment that starts about 6 inches above the ground. We have some nice cutters that have been developed for this that have a standing pedestal on them so that that pedestal is 6 inches. So you just set the pedestal on the ground. It's 2 lockers that are spaced 8 inches apart. Squeeze the handles and take out the stock segment that's cut in between those 2 lockers. Remove the leaves and the sheaths from the segment. We're not interested in what's going on in the leaves and sheaths. We only want the stock. Try to avoid any diseased stalks or any anomalies in the field. You know, sometimes we get stalks that are very small, that do not have ears on them, or you have maybe a volunteer corn that has come back that's a different hybrid that you can tell there's just something very, very different about that corn. We try to avoid those. Place the stalks in a cotton bag that we provide in our testing protocol, or you can put them in a paper bag and then mail them immediately to the lab or keep them cold or frozen to minimize the mold and degradation of the sample until it reaches the lab. Results usually get back to us within, you know, about a week. It doesn't take very long for the labs to turn those results back around. They report in parts per million nitrate, nitrogen, and, you know, we just need to remember it's only an indication of the nitrogen uptake that's occurred during that year. And it's going to look at whether it was inadequate, adequate, or excessive as it relates to the needs of that crop, or that even more specifically that particular hybrid that was planted. It's going to differ some based on state. You can usually find those values out there, and if you can't, the ones from Iowa State are pretty good. The ones from Indiana, for example, are not that much different from those that were originally published by Blackmer and Malorino. It's best if it's used as part of an active adaptive management plan. So, you know, like I said, it's not a one-stop look at it and be able to tell all kind of a test. You need to be evaluating your nutrient strategy, your crop strategy, and you know, maximizing cover crops or tillage to the best of your ability as a farmer. You know, as a CCA TSP, we're educating our farmers on what the latest technology is and what the research says. And a lot of times, at least with the farmers we work with, we really encourage people to use on-farm trials. It's hard to get a farmer who has had a tried and true method to change what they're doing. And if I can get them to, you know, agree to a couple of acres and we can change something, you know, if we have a farmer who has a strip tillage implement, you know, can we pay for that farmer to come to his neighbor and strip till his field for 1 year or 2 years? And that's some of the way that we're using this checkoff money. And then, you know, how does that evaluate?